Welcome to the talk through of my final major project. For my final project, I decided to do photography just because I'd always really liked doing it and I just wanted to expand my knowledge on it. So this first page is just showing a mind map that I did of all the different ideas and all the different routes that I could go down whilst doing photography. This page basically shows all my ideas but in a visual way, just so I can understand them a little bit more and actually see them down on the page. So for my first experiment, I took some close-up photos of my eye, and I'd always done close-up photography before, so I thought this was a good place to start. And I also wanted to do photography of people, so I thought it was a good mixture of both just to get me started on the project. I then found an artist that I really like called David Hockney, and he takes lots of different photos of someone's face and puts them all together in a collage. So I took some inspiration from David Hockney and did an experiment on it. So I took photos of different parts of my face to begin with and then edited them together, and also edited some of the parts into black and white as well, just because I thought it gave a cool effect. And then I took some photos of my friend's face as well and did the same, just so I could get some different angles and a bit easier because I was taking photos of another person. So I really liked the black and white parts of the experiment before, so then I decided to do another experiment but taking photos of my friend again and just editing them totally into black and white, which I ended up really loving, and I took this forward in my project quite a long way in the end. But I did some more research into some more photographers, and I found this one called Amanda Carlson, and she uses light photography as well, so I went in a totally different direction for a little bit and then did an experiment using lots of different lights, which was really good. I love doing that because I could experiment with different colour theories and just see what colours work together and what don't. So this first page just shows about a group critique that we did, which basically means that we went into different groups within our class and basically pitched what we were going to do in our project, which was really useful because we got different ideas back and we could give other people good advice as well, which really helped me because it gave me a lot more ideas for my project. So I looked into the history of photography as well, because I'd never really looked at that before, and I thought it could give me some more ideas on what I could do and take forward into my project and the whole reason behind how photography was created. This page shows some editing that I've done of photos that I had taken before I even started my project, just so I could show what I like doing, as well as trying out some new things and just seeing what works and what doesn't whilst I was editing. So the next page, I watched an Aperture video from YouTube, and it was actually really useful because I'd never played with Aperture before much, and I love how creative you can make your photos look. So by having all these different images in my book, I kept being able to go back to them and checking how I could use Aperture to make my photos look a bit more creative and get the effect that I want. So then I did an experiment using Aperture. So I had a bottle and some pebbles, and I just took some photos of those, and I could see the depth of the field in the background really change when I changed the aperture, so it'd either become clearer or a bit more blurred, which I thought was really cool because I'd never really used this before. And I took this on in my project as well quite a lot just because I liked the look of it. So then I did some double exposure photography because I'd done it in the year before and I really liked it, but I had some different ideas. I also edited the photos into black and white because I thought it made it look a lot more clearer and made the images stand out a lot more. I decided to do a bit more research into some more photographers, and I found this photographer which I really loved the work of, and she goes on to farms and takes photos of what they are doing, and I really related to that because my family has a farm, so I wanted to actually use that idea to take that on throughout my project, to take photos of the farm and explain what we do on our farm and how it's changed throughout all the different years and the different generations. So at this point through my project, I got to the middle of it. So I did a little midpoint evaluation, just explaining some of the things that I really liked, like the black and white photos and using aperture as well as the farm idea. So I just wrote about that a little bit, explaining what I wanted to do further on in my project. So I started doing experiments using all the different things on the farm. So I took some photos of my sister and her chickens and her mucking them out, and I actually really liked how these turned out, and it made me want to do this throughout my project even more. So I did another experiment where I took some photos of some of the cows that were on the farm. So I took some more creative ones than others, but I just wanted to get a mixture of lots of different types. So I edited those into black and white as well as editing them in their colour, just to get some different ideas of what I think I would like to take forward throughout my project. So because I wanted to have the idea of the contrast between how we do farming now and how it was done back when generations before me did it, I found some photos that my gran and granddad had of lots of family members years and years ago doing farming, and I decided to put these in my book and just look at them and see the difference. So I thought they were really nice, and I love how they're in black and white as well, which, because obviously I really like that throughout my project so far, I really wanted to take that forward. So I really like the link between taking photos now in black and white and photos back then in black and white. So they look kind of similar, but you can tell the difference just from the quality of the photos. So I carried on doing some more experiments just because I wanted to get some more experience. So I went around the farm taking photos of lots of different things in lots of different places, and I loved looking at the farm from a creative side rather than a working side, which I thought was really cool. So I took some photos of some things in different angles which you wouldn't normally see them at. So I wanted to also take some photos of people working, just because I think it's really nice to have people in their natural environment and taking photos of them doing stuff they love. So I had some photos of them pressure washing just because that's what they were doing that day when I decided to go out. And I really loved how they turned out, just getting people naturally working, doing what they love. Because I was coming closer to the end of my project, I decided to do a little plan of what I was going to do each week, just so it was a bit more stable and I knew exactly what I was going to do, so I can make sure everything was done on time. So I did some more experiments of just some machinery, because machinery is one of the main things that's changed so much in farming throughout the years. So I just really wanted to show that contrast. So I practiced taking some photos of some of the machinery, which was really fun because it's massive and a lot bigger than me, so I could take it from angles where I'm lower and a little bit higher if I held my camera up quite high. I had then completed all the experiments I needed to complete before planning my outcome, so I decided to start planning my outcome. But I did 3 ideas just to get lots of different ideas down so I could choose the best one. So the final idea that I decided to do was to have a milk churn and then have some chicken wire come out over it, which would then have the photos on. And I also decided to have some of the old photos that I had found as well as my own, just to show really how the contrast is. And I also wanted to make it look nice and pretty, so I decided to have some dried flowers coming out the top that I would pick from the farm whilst I was walking around. So these 2 next pages just show some of the photos that I decided to use in my outcome. Some of them have been in my book before and some of them are new ones, but I wanted to get a contrast of the animals, the machinery, as well as people, and just people naturally and people working. So after I had decided what photos I was going to use, as well as editing them into black and white, I started to sort out the milk churn and the chicken wire. So I basically just cut the chicken wire, but I had to make sure that I was wearing goggles and gloves just so I didn't cut myself, because the chicken wire is really sharp. So using wire cutters, I just cut the wire and then placed it over the milk churn. So I arranged it however I wanted it, making sure I turned in the edges just because they're really sharp and I didn't want anyone to catch themselves if they were walking by. So I changed my idea a little bit just because I thought it looked quite empty so up the top, so I decided to put a roll of chicken wire down through it as well, just to give it a bit more up the top. And then so that I put some Oasis between the chicken wire just so I could then put the dried flowers in that. I also added some Hessian over the Oasis just so you couldn't see it, because I didn't think it looked very nice just there on its own, but the Hessian made it look a lot better. So I then arranged the flowers how I wanted to, and I was really happy with the outcome of that because I thought it made it look really pretty and it related to farming so much. So then I took everything into college and I found some plimps that I wanted to put it on. So I just repainted them just because some bits of the paint had chipped off. I then stuck the photos onto the chicken wire with some wooden pegs, which I thought looked really nice. And I also changed my idea a bit more because I found a milking bucket that I wanted to actually put the old photos in to keep them a little bit separate from my photos that I'd taken, just to show a bigger difference, which in the end I thought looked really nice and it made a bit more of a display for my outcome. So this last page just shows the process of how I dried the flowers, so just picking them and hanging them up just to let them dry, as well as I put an evaluation on the bottom of this page just explaining how I thought the outcome went, as well as what I could have done better and just different things like that. So that's how I ended my project.